Welcome to Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten here. I have invited other people on, so we'll see if they are awake or about and can jump on with this. Otherwise, you're stuck with just me to react on the big news that Dre'Mont Jones has signed as a free agent for the Seahawks. And I've got to say, I'm absolutely delighted. I think this is the kind of move that they needed to make. I'd never anticipated that they would go this big on day one of free agency and go and get one of the premier players who are available. But, it did feel a little bit like this is what was needed. They needed to go and get somebody. They needed to go out there and sign a difference maker. Now, let's be right. Dre'Mont Jones is not Aaron Donald. He's not going to come in and completely change Seattle's defense on his own. But it's a good signing. It's a good signing. He's a scheme fit. He is what they need. It creates so many possibilities now. They don't have to go into the draft feeling like we have to get somebody, whether that's at 5 or at 20 or at 38 or whatever. It opens things up for them. They've got somebody they can plug in there, next to Al Woods, who can play any down, who can be disruptive, who can get after the quarterback, and hopefully can play some good run defense as well. Now, it's just a start. It's the first signing, and I'd like to see them go and see if they can go and get someone like Ashawn Robinson or Greg Gaines as well, to sort of get a proper defensive front going there. But then that just opens everything up. The pressure is completely gone to feel like you've got to go and need to get somebody for that defensive front, and you set the ball rolling properly. This could, for me, if you are serious about improving this team, if you are serious about being a good football team, if you are serious about trying to take a step forward, you can't nickel and dime your defense to being a lot better than it was last year. And with Shelby Harris being cut, you were already taking, a small step back. It's not a dramatic loss to lose Shelby Harris, but you were taking a step back nonetheless. You need to upgrade in positions. You need to add talent. You need to get better. And that can't all just come from the draft. You can't just expect rookies to come in and start very quickly. The Seahawks got quite lucky last year with the 2 tackles starting and being very, very good from the off. People like Ken Walker and Tariq Woolen starting very quickly. But then you look at someone like Boya Mafe, and he didn't hit the ground running. He got an injury in preseason. They spelled him an awful lot. Would have been nice to see a bit more of him and a bit less of Bruce Irvin, quite frankly. No offense to Bruce, but, you want to see those younger players not losing snaps, getting those opportunities, not Bruce Irvin just kind of filling in there, especially when the PFF grades were almost identical. So rookies don't always come in and kind of have the impact that you want them to have. You've got to have some veterans and some rookies helping to make this improvement. And I just really like this signing. I just think it's an impact signing. And for years they've said this is not what the Seahawks do. They don't go after it. They don't go and make a big splash. They take a step back, they wait for the second wave, and then they strike. And do you know what? For the last however many years, do you know what that's led to? It's led to, we're not going to sign a proper pass rusher. We're going to get Benson Mayowa. We're not going to get proper offensive lineup. We're going to get BJ Finney. We can sign BJ Finney and 2 other random players. I can't remember who they signed, rather than going and getting Jack Conklin. That was a classic example of, you need to learn from that. Why not go and get Jack Conklin for 10 million or whatever it was, 12 million, rather than buy 3 crap players who aren't on the team anymore for 4 million? That was a lesson to be learned there. And I feel like with this signing, they've learned the lesson from that. They could easily have, for the money it's costing, and I've got the numbers here, that they're starting to drip out. Jordan Schultz was the first, I think, to report the numbers. 3 years, $51 million for Dre'Mont Jones. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. That's what we're talking about here. It's about 17 million a year. It's a Jamal Adams contract. It's that kind of ballpark. You could sign 3 players with that and say, hey, look at the depth. And none of those 3 players could be an impact player. So, I personally, I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of this. It's most unexpected. It's a great thing to have drop on the Twitter feed at 1:40 in the morning, to feel like you're going to do an impromptu live stream. And I think it's really good news. It's 26 years old as well, and it does follow up, and it's more expensive. It's It's nearly twice as expensive as the Uchenna and Wosu deal. But for me, this is the kind of player that you should be investing in. You know, there's potential there for growth to be even more, to take another step forward. Uchenna and Wosu did that last year. You know, can Dre'Mont Jones do that as well? You know, that's the big question here. And Wosu's deal, you know, it's not dramatically expensive, and nobody watches Uchenna and Wosu and thinks you're watching a top class All Pro or anything like that. But he's a contributor, isn't he? You're like 9.5 sacks. You're getting what you pay for there. You're getting your 9.5 sacks. He fits the scheme. He seems like a good character. That's good. And that's what you hope to get from Dre'Mont Jones. Again, no one's expecting him to come in and take the NFL by storm and just be blowing up offensive lines every week and wrecking havoc. You know, it'd be unrealistic to think that. But they've had to pay a little bit more to get a quality player. And I'm down with it. I'm absolutely down with it. When you are spending $36 million on your safeties, I don't think spending a decent chunk of cash on a pass rusher is anything wrong with that. And I think it's a good move, and I think it's interesting. I've had a super chat here from Zach. It says, thanks for staying up late for commentary on free agency, Rob. Thank you very much to Zach. This one from Blackthorn, it's a super sticker. I think that's a thing, similar to a super chat. So keep those coming in. Keep sending them in. If you have a question, or if you just want to put a super sticker on, or say shout out from Zach, very happy to do those as well. But if you have a question, stick them in, because what I'm going to do on this stream is just sort of reflect on the sign-in and what it means for the Seahawks and the rest of free agency, what I hope they can do now, and how I think it's going to impact the draft. Slacker Heroes got in touch on the super chat. For me, the best part of this signing possibly means one of the quarterbacks at 5 is a real possibility. Great news. Maybe John Schneider is learning. Let's go. Listen, I think this is really good news for the Seahawks. It gets a big thumbs up from me. The draft got a big thumbs up last year. This is getting a big thumbs up for me. I think as we saw in 2011, sometimes you've just got to accelerate the rebuild and do it with players at a good age who are good quality players who you know you're going to come in and they're going to give you a certain level of performance. That's what I think Dre'Mont Jones does. That's what I think Sidney Rice did in 2011. And Zach Miller, you kind of knew what you were getting. Good, solid pros. You know, it wasn't Gronk and it wasn't Randy Moss that you were getting in 2011, but they were good enough, you know, to help this team improve. And I get the feeling that Dre'Mont Jones is going to be similar there. So, you know, that question there was about the impact on the draft and what it means. Well, this is the first thing I would say in terms of what this might mean in relation to the draft. The chances are, because the Seahawks only have $9 million in effective cap space and they've still got a lot to do, that this is going to be a back-loaded contract. What's the best way to have back-loaded contracts for people like Dre'Mont Jones? Cheap quarterback. That's the best way to do it. If the Seahawks have every intention of drafting a quarterback at number 5, they know they're going to have money to spend next year and the year after. So they can backload this contract to get Dre'Mont Jones through the door now. Yes, he will gradually get more expensive as time goes on, but that's okay because you might have a rookie quarterback on a quarterback on a rookie contract for 4 years. Obviously, the first year be a red shirt because Geno Smith is going to start this year, barring anything unforeseen. But then you're going to get 4 years on the rookie deal, with the final year being the 5th year option. So that's how you can afford stuff like this. And it makes sense. And when I see people in the comments, the comments here saying we're going to draft Carter, you know, I'm amazed how many Seahawks fans still think that Jalen Carter is an option. And I don't really want to go over old ground there, but what I would say to that is, when they're making signings like this, I don't think they are signing people like Tyree Wilson to play 5 technique, which is what people have been saying in the mocks and stuff like that. when you're paying Dre'Mont Jones this much money. I mean, you are not having Al Woods, £285 Dre'Mont Jones, and £271 Tyree Wilson as a front three. And they are trying to transition to this. They've admitted that they didn't really get the scheme right last year. So I don't see how that isn't going to work. You are going to need some big bodies in there. It's why I think Sean Robinson would be a really good next signing. Big, thick, run defending tackle next to Al Woods and Dre'Mont Jones. That makes sense to me. I could see them bringing in a couple of big defensive tackles, maybe one in the draft, one in free agency, load up that defensive front, keep your linebackers clean. That's what I see happening with that. And, you know, they're not going to take Jalen Carter. I always feel a little bit, you know, I never want to speak in guarantees because that's how you fall flat on your face. You would often say, I don't think this is going to happen, rather than this isn't going to happen. But with Jalen Carter, there's just been too much said by John Schneider and Pete Carroll about how they didn't compromise on character last year, how Kayvon Thibodeau wasn't on their board per Dave Wyman. That's the report that he put on 710 Seattle Sports. You know, the idea that you would come out in the public and go, the key to our 2022 draft was character, a focus on character without compromise, and making sure that we brought good people in, good leaders, responsible people throughout every single pick, and that being at the forefront of everything we decided. And then a year later to go and draft someone with maturity concerns, conditioning concerns, and who's just been charged with racing in a street car crash that led to the fatality of 2 people. That just seems preposterous to me. And if you still think that they're going to draft Jalen Carter with all that information to hand, I think you're in denial and you just want Jalen Carter too badly. Ty says, I'm coming around on Bryce Young if he's the only one left at 5. If the other 3 and Anderson are gone, what's your thoughts on him if the Hawks take him? I could definitely imagine that. I still think there's too much noise suggesting that it is going to be CJ Stroud number 1 and Bryce Young number 2, and that they are going to be the first 2 quarterbacks taken. I can imagine Bryce Young working very well in the timing offense that Shanahan likes to use. That's, to me, it feels like a fit. But at the same time, I can imagine Will Levis working in that system. And he's worked, obviously, with Liam Cohen, and the McVay system has got some shared DNA with the Shanahan system. So I could imagine that too. But I just feel like there is too much out there with, you know, Stroud and Young generally perceived to be the top 2 quarterbacks. I think the fact that the Texans missed out on Jimmy Garoppolo and then immediately signed Case Keenum, you know, I'm sorry, I've been distracted by a comment about, I need to address this because people keep saying stuff like this. If Carter didn't have character concerns, just think of Carter, Al Woods, Jones, holy smokes. Oh, sorry, I completely misread that. I thought you were talking about other people with character concerns. No, that would be a good line. There's no doubt. Look, Jalen Carter would be a fantastic pick if he had Will Anderson's character, but he doesn't. So to go back to what I was saying before I lost track, it's easy to lose track when the comments are flying in, but I appreciate them. Keep them coming. I think that it will be Young after Stroud. Number 3, I still have a hard time feeling that the Cardinals are going to trade down. I think that's harder to do now that Jimmy Garoppolo is signed. The reason I feel that way is simply because the Cardinals can't barter with the Raiders on desperation. They cannot turn to the Raiders now and say, you have no option at quarterback. You have to trade up. Give us like your first round pick next year or whatever. They can't play off that. And the Raiders can turn around and leverage the Cardinals and say, well, you know, here's the offer, take it or leave it. And if you leave it, we've got Jimmy Garoppolo. So it kind of makes it harder for a deal to come together, even if the Cardinals were doing that. The Cardinals would have to take a bad deal. Well, not a bad deal, but not a particularly strong deal. The GM's new. Is that how he wants to be known? As the person who took a bit of a milquetoast trade down from 3 to 7 as his opening gambit as a GM? Not sure about that. I think that would be hard to justify. It's a lot easier for him to stay at 3 and pick Will Anderson and say, hey, this is the guy we always wanted. He was top of our board. Yada, yada, yada. Great character guy. Can come in and fix the culture. It's broken in Arizona. It's a great pick for them. And Jonathan Gannon's come in. He built his success in Philadelphia off the defensive line. You're taking a defensive line edge rusher straight away. So For me, it's still obvious. I know people out there really believe that the Cardinals are going to trade down. I'm not in that boat for the reasons I've said. So I think it is going to be Stroud, Young, Anderson. And then, the Colts will have to decide who they want. I think they'll probably want Will Levis. He would fit the Chris Ballard system. And then I think it leaves Anthony Richardson for Seattle, and it would be a perfect redshirt situation for him to sit behind Geno Smith for a year. To answer your question, if Bryce Young is the one who falls to 5, which I can imagine, because I can imagine teams falling in love with Richardson, him maybe going first or second overall, and maybe it's Young who falls down, I'd be happy with it. Listen, ideally, you're not drafting a 5'10", 195-pound quarterback. He's very talented. A lot of people think he's the best quarterback in the draft. A lot of people think he's one of the best quarterbacks to come out in a long time. We've seen Seattle have a shorter quarterback and have some success in the past. I'd rather not go down that road again, because I do think there are some issues with shorter quarterbacks that we saw with Russell Wilson. I do worry about his health, but, he's a winner. He's been out there and performed at the top level for Alabama. Good character. I think in this situation, to potentially get someone who a lot of people think is the best player in the draft at number 5, I'd be down with it to take a chance on that. I think it is what it is, and I would prefer to go with Bryce Young and give him a chance to be great than taking Tyree Wilson, who doesn't even fit this defensive scheme, or trading down or whatever. To me, I'd just take Bryce Young in that situation. This one from DJ Jerry Nice. Just feel like spending dollars with the news. Cheers, Rob. Thank you very much, DJ. It's a good news day. This is the thing. We should be happy as Seahawks fans. We should be happy today. This is great news. I'm really pleased with this news. I think you should be too. It's really good news. It sets a lot of things up. But for starters, the defense is just better than it was an hour ago, and they're proactive, and proactive in the right way, not proactive in a Jamal Adams 2 first-round picks way. Proactive in the right way. Going and getting a good defensive lineman who we know can disrupt, because we've seen him do it. Phil and Alicia, 2004, $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Keep those coming in. If you've got a question, I will keep an eye out for the super chats. Got one from Justin here. They seem to be making all the right off-season decisions over the past 18 months after having some consecutive shockers. Keep up the great analysis. Look, I agree. I think that I've said it, and if you don't believe me, I said it immediately after the draft finished last year. A+ grade. A+ draft. Uchenna Nwosu, good sign-in. Clearly, a year on, they smashed the Russell Wilson trade out of the park. Got great value there. I don't think you can complain about their moves, but I just want to keep it going now. Just keep it going. And for me, that means my ideal situation to all of this is one of two things: quarterback at 5 or Will Anderson. They're the two options that I want. I think if somebody trades up to number 3 with Arizona, like the Raiders, fine. If it's going to be 4 quarterbacks off the board with the first 4 picks, take Will Anderson. Perfect scheme fit. Perfect. I'm happy to take a chance on him recreating what he did at Alabama, especially the year before last, in Seattle. Fine by me. No issue with that whatsoever. Great character, leader. No issue with that whatsoever. If it's Will Anderson, it's Will Anderson. You had a great piece to the defense. What I would say is I wouldn't go chasing the quarterbacks later on if you do that. I don't want them to just force. I mean, like, people are saying this, like, if it goes to Will Anderson, hey, maybe they could take Hendon Hooker in round 2. And I'm like, let's just pump the brakes on that. You don't have to take a quarterback in round 2 just because you've missed out on the top. And I think that's a bit rich for Hendon Hooker, and I would feel that way even without the injury. Round 3, round 4, you can maybe twist my arm on that. But I didn't watch Hendon Hooker and think I'm watching a top 2 round quarterback when I was watching it. And that scheme's the main reason why. A lot of potential, but he's 25 years old already. He's going to be 26 next year, and you're getting down to a point here where when is he? Is he? For me, it's just not as an attractive an option as people think, in my opinion. So if it's Will Anderson at 5, I just say keep going. if your best player at 20 is a defender, bring him in. If it's Michael Mayer or Bijan Robinson, because they fall stupid NFL for letting that happen, but if they did, whatever, take him. If you fancy taking Dre'Mont Jones and putting Abe Lucas at right guard, whatever, I'm down, whatever. There's a lot of good options at 20, 38. I'm warm into the options now. I wasn't a bit lukewarm at first, but now I'm seeing things. I'm watching more tape. I'm reviewing things after the combine. I can see some good options at 20 and at 38. So for me, best player available, 20, 38, 53, whatever. Take a sinner. I'm down with that. That's what I want to see. But for me, yeah, that at 5, it's an obvious choice for me. I think it's an obvious choice. One of the quarterbacks or Will Anderson. That's what I would go for. Jackson says, with the numbers we know so far, do you prefer the Jones deal or would you have liked to have signed Javon Hargrave more? Good question, Jackson. Thank you for the super chat. I think the thing about John Hargrave is that you are getting, I think just proven every down quality across the board. You plug him in and he's great. The problem is he's 30 years old. So that's the kind of signing that I think someone like San Francisco does make, because they're trying to contend now and they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. So he's a not for long player. He's not someone that you grow with. He's someone that tries to get you over the top right now. Whereas I think Seattle are still, and they won't use the R word, rebuild. I still think they are in a rebuild year. And I think that they are trying to bring players in who can form the new core. And at 26 years old, I think that's the right age. It's a more expensive version of Uchenna and Nwosu. And I think that's the right thing for this team. So it's not that I would have hated Javon Hargrave in Seattle or that I dislike that move for San Francisco. I think Hargrave's right for them and Jones is right for us. So I think both teams win-win. I've seen this message here saying the contract is front-loaded according to Ian Rappaport for Dre'Mont Jones. Well, he said how much money he's going to get in the first year. A week ago, people were saying that Geno Smith's going to get, it was something like he's going to get 52 million in the calendar year or something. So the actual language of the contract is not yet known. They say like he gets this much up front or this much in year one, but how the actual cap hits are structured and how much actually comes off the books now can vary. So I think we need to wait and see on that. But with the Seahawks only having 9 million in effective cap space, it can't be front loaded. I mean, they can't be paying him $25 million this year because they'd have no money to spend anywhere else and they'd have to find some savings. So it can't be that front loaded. But thank you for the super chats that are coming in still. Learners like us says, if it's Levis versus the field at 5, with the other 3 quarterbacks and Anderson taken at 1 to 4, do you take Levis? Yes, is my question. I am a big Will Levis fan, and I'm a big fan of this quarterback class. I have been for a long, long time. I don't really understand why the media has been down on it. And I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I've watched all of their games. I have watched every single game that Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson has played in college football. And I wrote thousands and thousands of words every week on each quarterback. And I've done streams and streams for a long, long time on each of these people. I've interviewed Will Levis. I've spoken to people at Kentucky about Will Levis. I am fortunate enough to speak to not a lot of people, but some people who are in the league and are prepared to share their thoughts on these players. So I'm going to have a decent base knowledge of what I think and what other people think. And I don't always agree with what other people think. I spoke to someone a year ago who told me that he thought Lewis Seen, the safety out of Georgia, was a 4th-round pick and was like the 5th or 6th best safety in the draft. And I thought he was like I think had him as like the first safety. I certainly had him in round 1, and he went in round 1. But that person I was talking to had round 4. So I don't always agree with these people. I don't adopt their opinions, but I do listen to them and I listen to what they say. And I really like Will Levis. And I think that what you've actually got to do is you've got to look at the tape in 2021 when he was playing with a good coordinator with a better offensive line than he had last year, and one weapon in Wan'Dale Robinson, I think you see spectacular quarterback play. I still think you see some spectacular moments on the field in 2022, but he was getting absolutely crushed every single week by, not a bad offensive line, but an absolutely truly horrendous offensive line with no weapons, with a running back suspended for 4 games, a hopeless Kentucky team that were going absolutely nowhere, and he got destroyed. And I think you've got to sort of put that into perspective and look at what he can be. And I love this quote from John Schneider. He was on the radio last week, and I've spoken about it a fair bit. I'll repeat it now. This is what he said on the radio just last week. You have to be able to project where a quarterback's going. You just can't look at here's A, B, and C, and that's part of their game. You have to be able to say, here's A, B, and C. What's it going to look like at X, Y, and Z? Where are they going to be? That's the study. That's the art. That's the projection that's involved. And that's the thing. There is an art to it. There is an art to projection. There is an art to sort of looking at somebody and going, okay, this is what I see they can do. Where do I think this person can be with development in the pros in our offense? And when you looked at someone like Malik Willis last year, I kept watching the tape and saw a quarterback who would have wide open receivers consistently running across the middle. He would look directly at them and would miss. He would not even consider throwing their way. That's what he showed on tape. And I just saw average from Desmond Ridder. And Matt Corral had a good arm for his size, but funky offense, good. I think a gritty, competitive guy. But, there were some sort of lingering things about what kind of a leader is he? So there were a lot of question marks there. And that's why I said for me, the whole class was a 3rd round grade. There was no one higher than a 3rd round grade. Kenny Pickett went in round 1, but the rest of them went in round 3. I think he called that right. When I look at this class, I detect the flaws in Will Levis's game and Anthony Richardson's game. And I've spoken a lot about the flaws that were in CJ Stroud's game. I've talked about some of the issues with Bryce Young, where I think sometimes he senses pressure that isn't there, scrambles out the pocket, probably because of his height. And I've seen some really awkward throws downfield where he's kind of just lobbed it into coverage, trying to, trusting himself too much, and he's made mistakes. He's not been able to do that at the next level. CJ Stroud, it was always about how is he going to be able to function outside of this offense, which holds his hand, but then he goes and plays Georgia like he's Patrick Mahomes. With Anthony Richardson, I understand the inaccuracy issues. I understand some of the things that he does with his technique and his footwork, which lead to some of those mistakes. But I also see somebody who's probably an even better athlete and more complete package than Josh Allen. And I've seen the progress that Josh Allen's made at Buffalo. And I think, what could this guy be? And then with Will Levis, I think he's got everything. He's got if you had to design a quarterback in a quarterback machine, physically, he would look like Will Levis. Now you've got to put him in the offense that fits. And it just so happens that the offense that fits him is Seattle's offense. So that's a long way of saying, yes, I would draft Will Levis at number 5. I have no issues with that. Ty says, I agree, Rob. I think Hawks are content at 5 and take whoever is left of the quarterbacks or Anderson. What about linebackers? Is this a good draft for linebackers? The answer to that, I'm afraid, is a big no. It is not a good draft for linebackers. I'm going to just open my database up, which has got my draft board on it. There is one name that I wanted to highlight, because the good thing about the combine is you are alerted to players that you've not scouted or players that you've heard of but you've not really thoroughly looked at. And I thought one of the players that impressed me at the combine and then I wanted to go and see more was the Tulane linebacker Dorian Williams. He ran a 4.49, good size, team captain, absolutely hits like a hammer. He is physical. He takes no prisoners when he's hitting somebody. And I love this tape. And I've given him a round 3 grade. And I think he is somebody to put a ring around and just keep an eye on. Dorian Williams at Tulane. Apart from that, you've got Drew Sanders and Trenton Simpson. I've probably gone a bit too far on downgrading Drew because he didn't test or anything like that. I want to put him down into round 2 until he tests, and then I'm prepared to move him back up into the fringe first round if he tests well. Trenton Simpson, he needed to have a big combine after a disappointing 2022. He didn't have that. And then I've got a whole bunch of guys in round 4, Deion Henley, Jack Campbell, Ventrell Miller, Owen Popo, based purely on his athleticism. His tape's rubbish. DeMarvion Overshone, who I think could actually end up being a safety. I think that he, whisper it quietly, but he's got a bit of Cam Chancellor to him. And I just wonder, he's also a big Cam Chancellor fan. So I just wonder if he might end up switching over to that sort of safety spot and being a bit of a Cam there. Henry To'o, Noah Sewell, and Jeremy Banks are the guys I've got in round 4, and Ivan Pace, Aubrey Miller, Dee Winters, late day 3. So it's not a great linebacker class, to be perfectly honest, and I think it is going to be difficult to find those positions. So I think the players that I've kind of highlighted, Cole Holcomb at Washington, I think they're a good player. I'd love to see Levante David. I don't think it's very likely. Bobby Wagner could still come back. I think a lot of Seahawks fans are rooting for that. So there we go. Take a 610. How to address the hole at centre, draft or free agency. I think best thing is to draft a hedge. Sign a hedge, draft a centre. I think Luke Weipler, John Michael Schmitz fit the scheme perfectly well. But if they were to go and get a Garrett Bradbury or something like that, I would not complain in free agency either. This one from Kevin Mullen says, do you see Michael Bennett in Dre'Mont Jones? I think they're different players. Michael Bennett was very much an inside-out rusher, edge rusher. I think Dre'Mont Jones is more of a 5 technique who can kick in as a 3 and rush from different areas. And I think he's more that type for me. Vincent Coe says, if we are drafting a safety early rounds, who do you want the Hawks to get? Early round, I don't want him to draft a safety early rounds. I'm not interested in that. I'd be intrigued to see if JL Skinner falls because of this biceps injury that he picked up right before the combine and the quips and value to be had there. I really like Jair Brown. I think I've put him in round 3 because he didn't test as well as I was expecting him to. But I like everything about his character, everything that is a playmaker. A lot of interceptions at Penn State. Jamie Robinson I think he's a fairly average looking player. He's not got great testing. He's not big, but he is intense. He hits, he shifts around the field. Would I be interested in him round 3, round 4? Yeah. I think Sidney Brown's got a lot of athletic qualities. Christopher Smith looked bigger than I thought he would do at the combine, even though his weight was about what expected. Didn't test that great, but he has just got a nose for the football. And then, there are guys later on that I think have got a bit of value to them. John Torchio, Larry Brooks at Tulane, Hunter Reynolds. They weren't at the combine, but, I think there are some players later on that you could get that could provide some depth and value there. So those are the kind of the names that I would look at. Really appreciate these super chats. Corey says, thanks for your coverage, Rob. For the critics who bring up AR-15's completion percentage, Matt Stafford while at Georgia, 52.7, 55.7, and 61.4. I think stuff like looking at people's completion percentage is something like when you are looking for an argument for or against somebody, that's the kind of stat you can go and dig out and work to your favor. I'm not worried about it. I mean, he didn't play with any good receivers at Florida, no good tight ends. He was basically a one-man band with running back playing in fits and starts, and it was Travis Etienne's brother. And he had no help. There's an awful lot of drops on tape, a lot of catches that should be made that aren't. And he's an inexperienced quarterback. He's like a freshman quarterback in college. He had 1 year as a starter, and I would expect him to have some growing pains with that. He needs time. I think this is why it would be perfect for Seattle to get him in, because he can sit behind Geno Smith and be mentored and learn the ropes and learn the offense. And I think then when he gets on the field, you've got to give him time as well. You have to be able to give him time to sort of go through those growing pains in the same way that Josh Allen did. And I think if he gets past that, he can be a superstar. He can be an MVP level player. Vincent Coe says, is Lucas Van Ness a good fit for the Seahawks? I don't think so, because I think he's in the Tyree Wilson kind of bracket in that he's not big enough to be a 5 technique, but he's not light enough to be an outside linebacker. So I don't think so. I personally think he's an okay player. Didn't start at Iowa. I can see him going in the top 20 because the way he tested, but not sure that he is a fit for Seattle. I think I've got through all of the super chats now. So I want to just quickly pivot back to Dre'Mont Jones. Jacina Anderson has tweeted something out. Jacina very quick to let us know that she speaks to players, and so is the case again here. She's put in a tweet, Dre'Mont Jones to me on why he chose Seattle. I feel like they have the biggest belief in me. They have a really promising team, and I'm looking forward to transitioning to that city, which is fine. I like the way that he's put that. I have no issue with with any of that. Obviously, money plays a huge part in this. It's not just the feels that he gets from coming to Seattle, but it certainly looks like Seattle made a big push to get him. Big push to get him, and he feels wanted. He feels like this is a place for me. And I have wondered a little bit, have the Seahawks relied a little bit too much on, hey, Pete Carroll, master recruiter, can he go out there and convince anybody to come to Seattle? And that hasn't always been the case. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. We haven't seen a Bennett and Averill type come in on the cheap for a long time. But combined with a bit of extra money and that sort of ability to go there and say, hey, come play with us. We're going to pay you, but this is why we want you. I think they've pulled off a coup here. I think there have been a lot of people that would have been really interested in Dre'Mont Jones. And I'd say it just opens up things for the draft. I want to talk about this a little bit more. Blitzy says, excellent signing. Front office are playing this offseason brilliantly. Here's to hoping one of these QBs falls to us at 5. And thanks for the live stream. And thank you for your super chat, Blitzy, who's a big supporter of the channel. I don't understand stuff like this. People saying, why do we want a QB? We better not draft a QB. Why? I don't get it. I don't understand that opinion. I know that people have been fed a steady diet by the media that this is a terrible quarterback class, that this player's no good, and that's the narrative's changing on that. You may have noticed, like Tom McShay's posting positive videos of Anthony Richardson. All of a sudden, Dan Orlovsky's trying to argue that he's more accurate than people think. Mel Kiper's coming around on Anthony Richardson again, and you're sort of seeing the narrative change a little bit here. But it's a good quarterback class. It's a good quarterback class. You are picking 5th overall. It's a rare opportunity for Seattle to be in range to get a really good quarterback. And look, we can all say that Geno Smith did a better than expected job last year. Better than expected job. But he's 33 years old this year, and you can't bank on him. And the Seahawks haven't banked on him because look at the contract they've given him. You can't bank on him to be the answer for the next 5 years and get you to the promised land. And all these people are saying, don't draft this player. Well, you're going to kick yourself in 5 years' time if one of these quarterbacks ends up going to Las Vegas and leading that team to glory. And really, the defensive players that I think people are so enamored on, Jalen Carter, forget about Jalen Carter. It ain't happening, as we've talked about already. Tyree Wilson isn't a fit for this defensive scheme at 6'5", 271. Where's he playing? He's a 4-3 power end. He's not a 3-4 outside linebacker. He's not a 3-4 defensive end or 5 technique. He's a power end for a 4-3. There's only Will Anderson who fits the scheme. If Will Anderson's there, no issue taking him. Would be ecstatic with that. Fine by me. But assuming he goes to Arizona at number 3, because again, I don't think they're going to trade out, then why not invest in one of these quarterbacks? It's a good quarterback class. When I see things like this saying Richardson sucks, I mean, with the greatest respect, Jaeger Rodel, come at me when you've written thousands and thousands of words on the guy and watched every game he's ever played. He doesn't suck. He doesn't suck. He's a really good player. He just needs time and development, like all players do. Slacker Hero says Nolan Smith at 20, or will he be gone? Trade down. Nolan Smith. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wouldn't draft Nolan Smith at 20. I think people are overreacting to the combine and the interviews, which admittedly are great. He's a bundle of energy and he's a cool guy. He's beloved at Georgia, and yeah, I like him a lot as a person. But I think people are getting a bit carried away with his stock. He is a tweener. He's not someone who has played orthodox linebacker, although his size probably dictates that he should do at the next level. He doesn't have the length to play off the edge. And he, funnily enough, despite his athleticism, does not have the bend and straighten around the arc that you would perhaps expect. He's actually quite stiff getting around the edge. What he's best at, which is surprising, is that he's surprisingly good at getting his hands into people at his size and working the tackle to get away from them. But he is not somebody who comes like screaming off the edge. Like, if you want to see a classic example of this, do you know what? I'm gonna upload a video, and it'll take a couple of minutes, but I want to show you what I mean by, somebody who can bend and straighten and can, get around the arc and stuff like that, because that's not what Nolan Smith can do. So I don't think he's a great scheme fit, really. I mean, he's not a bad scheme fit. I just wonder what he is. What is he in this defense? Not really sure on that. So let me show this video. The video is nearly loaded, so as soon as it's done, it's sort of what I'm talking about. I want to show you to it, to what I mean when I'm talking about bending and straightening. So the video is just processing now, and it's about Will McDonald. And now, when I watch Will McDonald, I think that's a Seahawks pass rusher. And I think if Will Anderson isn't there at number 5, and they still want to get somebody in that kind of range, I've actually uploaded the wrong blamming video. So give me a second, and I'm going to dig it out. And I'll be able to show you what I am talking about. But yeah, I think if we see a situation whereby Will Anderson's not there at 5, then I think what they're going to end up doing is potentially taking this guy, Will McDonald, at number 20. I think that could be a distinct possibility for the Seahawks. And as for Nolan Smith, I think he's going to go in round 2, personally. I think he's going to go in round 2. I think that's what his sort of talent and tweener nature dictates, and that's where I've been projecting him. I expect him to have an amazing workout. Nothing changed in that regard for me. I've not shifted him from round 2, and I think he should go in round 2. I've seen this person here saying Will Anderson didn't test great. Darnell Wright made him look ordinary. What is true about Anderson? Well, here's the facts about Will Anderson. He didn't test out of this world, but he didn't test badly. So he had a 1.61, 1.61, 1.60, 10-yard split. Anything in the 1.5s is elite. So he's just outside that. He ran a 4.60 40. Again, it's not amazing. It's not a 4.45 or anything like that. It's not bad either. What we need to see is a short shuttle, because all of the elite pass rushers run in a fantastic short shuttle. Like that's 4.10, something like that. That's what Garrett and Von Miller and the Bosas and TJ Watt and people like that, they all sort of run a fantastic short shuttle. So we need to see at the Alabama Pro Day. I've got all the Pro Day dates here. The Alabama Pro Day is in 10 days' time on March the 23rd. They have 2 Pro Days. They have another one on the April the 6th. But I think the March 23rd one is the main one. That one on the 6th might be something that they save for maybe Bryce Young to have a special throwing session or something like that. But March 23rd, hopefully Will Anderson will do a short shuttle. If he does and he gets in those like 4.1s, then that's a thing. I've seen that the gentleman who made the last comment on Will Anderson is saying it's suspicious that he didn't run the short shuttle, but hardly anyone ran the short shuttle. Basically, there's a bunch of offensive linemen ran the short shuttle, and a handful of other people. It's one of the problems of the combine that they've sort of not given people the opportunity to do that or made them do it. Anyway, this is what I mean about Will McDonald. This is him against Darnell Wright, the guy who did shut down Will Anderson in college and is, for me, the best defensive tackle in this draft. Here's what Will McDonald did to him at the Senior Bowl. So there we go. I mean, what the thing that I love about him, and this is what I think the Seahawks will love about him, is he's not a one-trick pony by any stretch. His bend and lean is probably the best I think I've ever seen. Absolutely fantastic off the edge. He can turn the corner on tackles. Like I said, I don't think I've seen anybody do it better. He's in that sort of Brian Burns bracket for me in terms of length and his size and the way he is, but I think he actually does a better job. And Brian Burns is very good at bending the arc. I think he does it even better. He's 240 pounds, and yet he's got heavy hands. He's got very long arms, 35-inch arms, very heavy hands. It's like the only bit of him that looks heavy. And and you saw it there against Darnell Wright. He got into Darnell Wright, engaged contact, jolted him off his spot, and then beat him for speed. And like, not many people who, like Will Anderson, couldn't do that. Will Anderson just basically ran into Darnell Wright when he played him and stuck on the block. And there you see at the Senior Bowl, Will McDonald gets into Darnell Wright, disengages, beats him. He has an unbelievable inside counter. So because of the threat of his speed and his ability to get up to the edge and attack with that dynamism and bend the arc so well and get off is brilliant. Tackles will shift over to the edge thinking, oh, God, I've got to really watch this side. He's got a devastating inside counter. And then the other thing is he just has this remarkable spin move. And he doesn't just pull it out all the time or just think, he's not thinking in his head, spin move, I'm going to go for a spin move here. He just instinctively chucks it in there. He will engage, play the block, and if it calls for a spin, he will spin, and he wins with it. So he's got an arsenal. He's got the skill set. He's got the quickness. He's got the length. For me, he's the complete package. He just needs to maybe get up to 245, and it's like the perfect edge rusher for Seattle. So I think, people are saying, why is he not ranked higher in the draft? Well, Mel Kiper put him at number 8 overall in his last mock draft, and that's not ridiculous. I think the Seahawks will be lucky if he's there at 20, and if he is, and Anderson is not, then I could imagine that the Seahawks would just sort of, if they do take the quarterback at 5 and Will McDonald's there at 20, that could definitely work. I could definitely see that. So incredible player, very explosive. I think you've also probably seen the video of him jumping over a car by now. So he's got very explosive jumps, very quick. He was actually sick at the combine, which kind of impacted his testing. Still did an 11-foot broad jump. Still like a 36-inch vertical. His field drills have still moved around very, very well, even though he was clearly under the weather, very, very sick. I think he said he lost something like 5-6 pounds the day before, something like that. So, yeah, I think he's a very, very interesting player and someone to keep an eye on. If you have any last super chats, then bang them in because we're going to wrap up soon. Just sort of wanted to end on some thoughts on free agency. So obviously Dre'Mont Jones in, like I said, A+ for me, good signing, love it. Exactly what the defensive line needed. They needed an impact player. Go and do it. What do I want to see next? Some run. I want to see them build off this. Use the momentum of this. I'd like to see them go and get a Sean Robinson, somebody like that. Don't mind it being Greg Gaines either. One of the 2 Rams defensive tackles for your run defense. Plug up that space up front. That's what I'd like to see. I would like to see a linebacker, and I don't mind them going a bit cheaper there. I don't, I know everyone wants Bobby Wagner. I'm happy to go for a Cole Holcomb. What I want to see is speed, intensity, quickness, and a bit of youth at a good age in that position. I think Cole Holcomb plays his hair on fire. He wears a mullet, incidentally. He plays like it's on fire. Very, very good short shuttle. The Drew Tranquil's out there, run a good short shuttle. I think he's still available. There are other players that fit that kind of mold at linebacker, and I'm happy to go with that. I don't think you need to spend a ton of money at linebacker. For me, I hope if they do go and get Bobby Wagner, they let the market come to them, and it seems like that's what they're doing. So fair play to them for that. And really, that's it. Anything else other than that's a bonus for me, because you do have so much draft stock. I just wanted to see something that didn't force them to go and draft for need in the draft. I wanted them to be able to go and say, there's this great, if you get to 20 and the best player available is an offensive player, that you still feel like you can take him. And I think that's what a move like this does. you have answered your biggest need in free agency. I think you should try and answer as many needs as possible now, so that when you get to the draft, you can take the best talent available and build your football team. I think that's how you're supposed to do it. I think the Seahawks have got themselves into a lot of trouble in past years because, we traded away Frank Clark in 2019. Rashawn Gary's not lasted to us. Brian Burns hasn't lasted to us. Oh, crap, let's take LJ Collier. And the same with Darrell Taylor. Oh, God, we haven't been able to sign Jadeveon Clowney. We've not been able to sign anybody else, really. We've got to go and trade up now and get Darrell Taylor, who's not even healthy for a year. I still think it's up in the air as to whether Darrell Taylor's been a good fit despite his sack production. So the jury's still out on him. So you see what I mean? Like you force yourselves into a corner with that when really what you want to do is go, we love this player, we're going to take him and we're going to build around him. And I think that's what the Eagles did very well last year. Their first 3 picks last year didn't play that much, but now they're set up to come in and replace the guys who've moved on. And I think sort of that we're so focused these days in the draft on filling needs and getting impact players and getting players that can start right away. I don't think you always have to feel like that. I think you're building a football team, and sometimes it's not the worst thing in the world for your rookies to sort of sit and watch and if you've got an actual plan for them. I don't think you should be benching them for Bruce Irvin like Boye Mafe, but I think for certain players, it is okay to let them have a step back, and that's what I hope they do if they take a quarterback at number 5. Well, they are going to do it because they've signed Geno Smith. But I think so far right now, the fact they've got Smith on the contract they have, they've kept the door open for the draft in terms of quarterback. They've kept the door open for best player available by signing Dre'Mont Jones. I think this has been a tremendous start to the offseason. I can't say anything other than that. I think it's been fantastic. Take a 610 says we could use Anthony Richardson like Taysom Hill year 1 and 2. I'd rather not. I just don't. I'm not down for any of that. For me, you can be a bit risky with Taysom Hill because I don't think the Saints ever truly believed he was a quarterback. Imagine if Anthony Richardson got hammered and broke his leg or tore an ACL or something like that, trying to run the ball or something, or taking a sweep or trying to catch a pass in the end zone. And then you lost him, and he was, instead of like learning the quarterback ropes, he was rehabbing. I mean, that'd be a disaster. I think for me, if you draft him, you sit him, you let him just observe, watch Geno Smith, absorb like a sponge, and that's what I would go for. So that would be my take on Anthony. I don't want to see him doing any of that Taysom Hill stuff. I don't want to see him in any packages. I'd just happy, you've made an investment at quarterback, let him go and get after it. That would be my take on this. So yeah, that's about where we go. And just to reiterate what I think for the draft, Will Anderson or one of the quarterbacks at 5, best player available after that. And there are some very attractive defensive linemen. I think you could build a very good defense with this draft. Now that you've got Dre'Mont Jones, and I think you build on that, we could start to see a defensive core come together. And you might not see its best football in 2023 because it's going to be quite young. But I do think that you could be sort of trending in the right direction on defense. When's the last time we said that? It's been a long, long time. Frank B says, thanks for all the work. Frank, thank you for that super chat. Really appreciate all of your super chats and all of your support, and the fact that you jumped on to listen to an English bloke talking about the Seahawks at this time of the night for me, and for you guys, a different time of the day. So appreciate that. Appreciate all of you watching. Stay tuned to the channel, because if there's any other big news, I'm going to jump on and do a live stream or a video. So make sure you subscribe and you won't miss any of the videos. You can press the little bell for the notification button. You won't miss anything then. SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I am going to go and stick an article with some thoughts on there now to accompany this live stream. But SeahawksDraftBlog.com throughout the off season, you can get all of the information on the draft. There's lots of stuff on there. I'm going to publish my updated horizontal board soon. Lots of thoughts on what the Seahawks should do. Lots of thoughts on draft prospects. I mean, you've missed a lot of the good stuff because that happens from September to December. But still time to catch up with 6 weeks to go until the draft. So SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Make sure you bookmark the site. Like the video. And afterwards, for the sake of the algorithm, even if you've been commenting in the live chat, if you could leave a comment in the comment section as well with your thoughts on Dre'Mont Jones signing for the Seahawks, that would be much appreciated. And don't forget to like the video. Till next time, good day for the Seahawks. Good start to free agency. Let's hope for more to come. Bye for now.